Buckle up. 15 years ago, I was 25 and was finishing my contract, and my then girlfriend of 3 years, Natalie, was acting increasingly strange. I came back from a 2-month assignment and was prepared to break up with Natalie. She came by and gave me the good news that she was pregnant. I asked how far along she was, and she said 5 weeks, so I broke it off with her and told her she needed to do better at math. She refused the breakup and insisted the baby was mine, so I told her the following. 1, paternity test, and 2, if the child was mine, we can talk about financial support and custody arrangements with lawyers. She refused both and told everyone we both knew that I was a deadbeat for knocking her up and leaving her. I told everyone I was on a 2-month assignment when she conceived, but a few insisted, for the sake of decency, I house her and give her limited support. I consulted a lawyer about this mess, and the lawyer made it very, very clear that any overt support I give could be seen as me taking responsibility. So I told these friends that, and most dropped it, except one guy who again insisted that charity couldn't be used as a legal cudgel like that. I told him if he believes that, he can house her. He agreed to drop it after that. The child was born, and I'm not even going to do the whole "she didn't look like me," because most babies are born with squished faces, and all I saw were the pics she sent me with messages like, "Emma wants to know where daddy is," and shoot. She still refused to take any paternity tests. But her constantly showing up with that baby got to the point where I filed a restraining order. Fun fact, in my state, a permanent restraining order is not, in fact, permanent. It is 2 freaking years long. The only way to get it longer is if there was a violent crime associated. And apparently, bugging someone with a baby that's not theirs is not a violent crime. So my life for the last 14 years has been me renewing the restraining order every 2 years, because once it clears, Natalie shows up again with my not child. I did eventually find a nice girl, get married, and now I have a 9-year-old son, Henry. My wife, Kim, is well aware of Natalie and Emma. When the cycle begins again, I always say the same thing. 1, paternity test. 2, once paternity is proven, I will take custody and get financial support set up. Natalie always refuses and says both are insulting. Recently, the cycle started again, and this time, Emma showed up first. She approached my son during a school event, visit to the zoo, and said, "Hi, I'm your big sister, Emma." Henry knows about stranger danger and ran away to a teacher. I had to have a very, very painful talk with the teachers and parents who were at the event about my relationship with Emma and Natalie, and how Emma was never my daughter. I even called her my naughter once or twice in the conversation. After the group disbanded, one of the mothers confronted me and said that while Natalie was in the wrong telling this poor child I was her father, calling her my naughter was mocking this situation. I kind of get where she's coming from, just I can't help this child. And the honest truth is playing light of the 2-year cycles is the closest I can get to finding peace in the situation. To answer the repeated question, in my state, the mother has to start the petition for the father to be established and the test to start. There is no instance where a father can start the petition. There was a chance to do this when Emma was born, but the window was exactly 1 month, and I was much too focused on the restraining order, not thinking the paternity angle would bite me in the butt. One last time, to everyone saying, "Just ask for custody. That'll force DNA test." Literally can't be done. I've been through this enough with a lawyer and have consulted with other lawyers. There are laws protecting children, and a lot of them exist for good reason. I'll explain it the way my lawyer explained it. Imagine there's a woman who ran from an hurtful ex. She finds out after she escaped that she's pregnant. She gives birth, never puts the ex on the birth certificate, never tries to file for support because she wants to get as far away from him as possible. He finds out years later and tries to rope her back in using the child as leverage. She can just say, no, and the state has to let it go. There is, however, a provision if the father was involved enough to know when the birth was, that he could submit his DNA to the state within 31 days of birth as a potential father. But that time has long passed. The law is designed this way on purpose. In the eyes of the family court, I am a random person, and I was never claimed to Emma. If you think the state wants all children to be claimed by fathers and will gladly submit any DNA test whenever any potential father shows up, find a random single mom, call the family court, and say you want to claim her child. I am tired of everyone acting like all I needed to do was fill out one sheet of paper and this nightmare would end. Please, just call a lawyer for a free consultation or post on legal advice and ask them. It doesn't work that way. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I feel sorry for Emma because she has been brainwashed by her mother, and that is all she knows. She is innocent in this, yet her world and her sense of identity seems likely to come apart one day. It must be a lie, not just because of the timing, but because the DNA test is such an easy and obvious way to prove it if she is telling the truth. Comment 2. Not the a-hole NTA. I can understand why someone would think that this is callous, but it is your business, and you have every right to use humor to try to deal with it. Do not say that to Emma. Considering that she believes your mom, that would be pretty rude. Now the burning question, how did she find Henry while he was on a field trip? Now for the update. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. So, last week, things took a turn I didn't see coming. Emma showed up at Henry's school again, but this time she was with Natalie. They were waiting outside the gates when school let out. Henry saw them and immediately ran back inside to get a teacher. The school called me, and I rushed over. By the time I got there, Natalie was causing a scene, yelling about how I was keeping her daughter from her brother. The principal had to call the police to get her to leave. When I got home, Kim was furious. She said we needed to do something more permanent about Natalie and Emma. I agreed, but I didn't know what. We talked about moving, but Henry loves his school, and we didn't want to uproot him. Kim suggested we try to get a more permanent restraining order, but I reminded her that it wouldn't work without a violent crime. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how this was affecting Henry. He's a good kid, but he's starting to get anxious and scared. I decided I needed to do something drastic. I called my lawyer the next morning and asked if there was any way to force a paternity test. He said the only way would be if Natalie agreed to it, which I knew she wouldn't. Then I made a mistake. I decided to confront Natalie directly. I thought maybe if I talked to her, I could convince her to take the test. I found out where she was living and went over there. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. I told her we needed to talk, and she let me in. I told her that this had to stop, that she was hurting Henry and Emma by dragging this out. I begged her to take the paternity test so we could all move on. She just laughed and said she didn't need a test to know I was Emma's father. I lost my temper and yelled at her, saying she was ruining our lives. She got angry and told me to leave, so I did. The next day, I got a call from my lawyer. He said Natalie had filed a complaint against me for harassment. I couldn't believe it. I was just trying to fix things, and now I was in more trouble. My lawyer said we could fight it, but it would be a long process. Meanwhile, Henry was having nightmares about Emma and Natalie. He started refusing to go to school, saying he was scared they would be there. Kim and I decided to keep him home for a few days until things calmed down. But that just made things worse. Henry started getting more anxious, and Kim and I were arguing more and more. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Emma. She said she wanted to meet me, alone. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, and she looked nervous. She told me she had found some old letters from Natalie to another man, written around the time she was conceived. She said she didn't know what to think, but she wanted to know the truth. I was shocked. I asked her if she would be willing to take a paternity test, and she said yes. I couldn't believe it. I called my lawyer and set up the test for the next day. Emma and I went together, and the test was done. Now we just had to wait for the results. While we waited, I started thinking about everything that had happened. I realized I had been so focused on proving I wasn't Emma's father that I hadn't considered how this was affecting her. She had grown up thinking I was her dad, and now she was questioning everything. I felt guilty for not trying harder to resolve this sooner. A few days later, the results came in. I wasn't Emma's father. I felt a huge sense of relief, but also sadness. Emma looked devastated. I tried to comfort her, but she just walked away. I haven't heard from her since. I told Kim and Henry the news, and they were both relieved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed Emma. She deserved to know the truth, and now she did, but it had come at a huge cost. I also started thinking about Natalie and why she had done all this. I remembered something my mom had told me years ago. She said Natalie had a rough childhood, with parents who were always fighting and a dad who left when she was young. Maybe she was just trying to create the family she never had, even if it was built on a lie. I don't know what will happen next. Natalie hasn't contacted me since the test, and I'm hoping she finally leaves us alone. But I can't help but worry about Emma. I hope she finds the answers she's looking for and can move on with her life. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to tell my nosy mom the gender of my baby after she ruined my engagement announcement? My husband and I got engaged in 2019 and were married in 2021. The night he proposed, I sent a photo of the engagement ring to my parents and close friends. My mother called me back to ask questions about the proposal and said she wanted to reach out to family members right away. I asked her to not share the news yet, as I wanted to share a better photo of the ring, since she critiqued how my nails weren't polished and the photo wasn't that great, to send out to everyone through Facebook, where the majority of my family and friends would see it. She dismissed what I asked, even when I kept asking her not to, because it was not her news to share. The next morning, I got a text from my aunt, my mother's sister, congratulating me on my engagement. I rushed that morning to paint my nails and send a better photo to make the engagement post on social media. I was a bit hurt by my mother disregarding this request. I felt that with her sharing the news when I asked her not to, she took a little bit of the joy of us sharing with the rest of our family and friends. I am now 20 weeks pregnant and just had my anatomy scan this morning and learned the gender of my baby. We had told our family members beforehand that we would have the scan today and would make an announcement at some point soon after. We are not holding a gender reveal party since we have family members all over, and we'll probably make the announcement by calling grandparents first, then making the announcement through a video or photos to be shared through text and later online. My mother called me later in the afternoon to ask about the gender. I advised her that we would make the announcement in a few days, as we were trying to figure out how to announce it. My mom was upset that I wouldn't even give her a hint, not sure I would exactly do that, and that she should have special mom privileges when it comes to stuff like this. I want the announcement to be fair and make it at the same time. We have family all over the country and overseas, and we find it is easier to spread news like this all at one time so no one is upset. I began thinking back to the engagement and how she still shared the news when I asked her not to. When she was still not happy that I wouldn't disclose the gender, I mentioned that the last time I asked her to not share something, she did it anyway. When she asked for clarification, I let her know about my aunt texting me about the engagement. She did get a bit defensive as she stated she didn't remember that, but she also dismissed it like it wasn't a big deal that she shared the news even when I asked her not to. After we ended the call, I felt a little guilty and thought that maybe I was a little harsh. I'm close to my mom, but worry this might have created tension in our relationship. I know that part of this is her being excited about what is going on in my life and wanting to share the news right away. But if I'm asking her not to share the news and she does it anyway, it feels like I'm just being dismissed because she's my mother. I worry that further down the line, this recent conversation can affect our relationship. So am I the jerk for how I handled this situation? And if I am, what might be some advice to cut this tension? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Sorry, Mom. You lost any special mom privilege when you disregarded my request to let me announce my own engagement to the wider family. You proved I can't trust you not to spill our news first. Spouse and I will be announcing the gender in a few days. You will find out with everyone else. Comment 2. Not the idiot. You may be close to your mom, but she doesn't respect your wishes and she has no restraint. So if you want to announce the gender of your baby your way, you will not tell your mother in advance. As for tension, learn to live with it. Being a doormat is no way to run your life. Now for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and it's been a bit of pretty hard on us. After the anatomy scan, my husband and I decided to take a couple of days to plan out how we wanted to announce the gender of our baby. We wanted it to be special and something we could look back on fondly. We decided to create a short video montage of our journey so far, ending with the gender reveal. We thought it would be a nice way to include everyone, especially since our family is spread out. However, things took a turn when my mom called me again, just a day after our last conversation. She was still upset about not knowing the gender and kept pushing for a hint. I tried to stay firm and reminded her that we wanted to make the announcement in our own way. She hung up abruptly, and I could tell she was hurt. Later that day, I got a call from my dad, who rarely gets involved in these matters. He told me that my mom was really upset and felt like she was being excluded from important moments in my life. He suggested that maybe I should just tell her the gender to keep the peace. This put me in a tough spot. I didn't want to cave in, but I also didn't want to create more tension. My husband and I talked it over, and we decided to stick to our plan. We finished the video and sent it out to our family and friends. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. Everyone except my mom, that is. She didn't call or text after receiving the video, which was unusual for her. I started to worry that I had really hurt her feelings this time. A few days later, I got a call from my aunt, the same one who had texted me about the engagement. She told me that my mom had been talking to her about how she felt left out and unimportant. My aunt tried to mediate, suggesting that I should have a heart-to-heart with my mom to clear the air. I agreed, but I was also frustrated. It felt like my mom was making this all about her, rather than being happy for me and respecting my wishes. I called my mom and asked if we could meet up to talk. She agreed, and we met at a local cafe. The conversation started off tense, but I tried to stay calm and explain my side. I told her that I understood she was excited and wanted to be involved, but that it was important for me to share these moments in my own way. She listened, but I could tell she was still upset. She brought up how she felt like she was losing her place in my life, especially now that I was starting my own family. This hit me hard. I hadn't realized she felt this way, and it made me see things from her perspective. I apologized for making her feel excluded, but also reiterated that she needed to respect my boundaries. We ended the conversation on a somewhat positive note, but I could tell there was still some lingering tension. In the midst of all this, I started to notice some changes in my own behavior. I was becoming more anxious and stressed, constantly worrying about how my actions were affecting my mom. It started to take a toll on my relationship with my husband. He noticed I was more irritable and distant, and we had a few arguments about it. He felt like I was letting my mom's feelings overshadow our happiness, and he was right. I realized I needed to find a balance between keeping my mom happy and maintaining my own peace of mind. Around this time, I also found out that my mom had shared the gender of our baby with a few close family members before we made the official announcement. This was a huge blow, and it brought back all the feelings of betrayal from when she shared our engagement news. I confronted her about it, and she admitted she had let it slip in her excitement. This was the breaking point for me. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wishes, I would have to start setting stricter boundaries. This conversation was tough, but it was necessary. My mom was hurt, but she finally seemed to understand the gravity of her actions. We agreed to work on our communication and to be more mindful of each other's feelings. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. In the midst of all this family drama, I also had to deal with some unexpected news from my past. An old friend from college reached out to me wanting to reconnect. We had a falling out years ago over something trivial, but it had left a lasting impact on me. This friend apologized for their part in the fallout and wanted to make amends. It was a lot to process, especially with everything else going on, but I decided to give it a chance. We met up for coffee and talked things through. It was surprisingly cathartic and made me realize how much I had been holding on to past grievances. This experience made me reflect on my relationship with my mom. I realized that part of my frustration with her stemmed from unresolved issues from my past. Growing up, my mom had always been very controlling and overbearing. I had never really addressed these feelings, and they were now manifesting in my current situation. This realization was a turning point for me. I decided to seek therapy to work through these issues and to learn how to set healthier boundaries. So that's where things stand now. My relationship with my mom is still a work in progress, but we're both making an effort to improve it. I'm also focusing on my own mental health and trying to be more present for my husband and our soon-to-be-born baby. It's been a challenging few weeks, but I feel like I'm finally starting to find some clarity and balance. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for telling my husband's ex-wife to stop using her kids as pawns? This is something that has been bothering me for ages, but is starting to get harder to overlook. I do appreciate those of you who take the time to read this. To give you a bit of backstory, I am my husband's second wife. He has 2 kids, 16-year-old and 17-year-old, from his previous marriage who live with us permanently. They only see their biological mother for 2 months during the summer when they are out of school. We have been married for the past 10 years, and the kids have been with us the whole time. During our marriage, she has missed more birthdays than she has remembered. The same for Christmas and other holidays. No gifts, no calls, no cards. The past couple of years of our marriage, she has all of a sudden decided she wants to be more involved in their lives. I'm talking about randomly showing up at our house to pick them up with no word to us beforehand. I have been reminded more than once by my in-laws that the kids have a mother, which is hurtful but true. I shouldn't make such a big deal when she comes around. I don't make a fuss, but we have asked her to let us know in advance, and we can arrange something. Never once has she shown us the courtesy of calling and has been upset more than once because we had already made plans. She has other children who have disabilities, and from what the children have told us, she makes them watch them when they are there. Her house, her rules, I suppose, but I feel like she is using them for free childcare. Not to mention the children are cold towards us when they return home. Now to the issue at hand. Recently, my siblings had their 23andMe done, and we found out we had some pretty cool ancestors. Once I found out the news, I mentioned to my in-laws that it would be fun to do it as a family, meaning my husband and all of the kids, and see what all our genetic makeup looks like. I was immediately shot down. I believe the exact words were, "I wouldn't do that if I were you, this situation might end badly." So now here I sit, wondering what was meant by that. Since then, I have been wondering if she was referring to the kids from the previous relationship, because there is absolutely no doubt about the others we have had together. I asked him what he thinks, and he seems reluctant to do so as there have been whispers about their parentage in the past. So I am wondering, am I the jerk for trying to encourage him to get a paternity test? I edited this to add in and hopefully clarify a few things. I am not trying to be malicious in this. It was simply something that I was wondering if I would be judged harshly for. I love these kids and will continue to do so. That isn't even a question. Neither is divorce. My husband has always known my opinion on a situation like this due to my own family history. He wouldn't leave because of this. He has his doubts and has expressed such. Please understand, none of this has ever been spoken in front of the kids. Due to the nature of the divorce, a lot has been kept from the kids. I don't talk down about their mother and have encouraged them to try to keep in touch. I think the issue with my in-laws is due to cultural and personality differences. I am fine with this. I married my husband because I love him. I also never said I would share those results with anyone outside of me and my husband. What started off as a way to explore my ancestry and my husband's ancestry ended up with me having questions. Yes, some of you could be right. It may have nothing to do with the kids. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, 2 facts. 1. Kids are colder to you after a visit to mom. 2. There's clearly craziness from the ex, along with that manipulation/alienation. I can see the ex pulling all sorts of crazy things, such as using the 23andMe to call for court tests, then denying parentage from the husband, relieving her of the child support burden, but also ending his rights to see the kids until they're 18. Did I mention free babysitting for 2 years from the 16-year-old? Let sleeping dogs lie until the ex can't bother the kids. Comment 2. That's irrelevant since he doesn't want to stop being their dad. Your problem has a simple solution. When she comes over to pick up the teenagers for free labor, just say no. If she wants custody, she can go to court and ask for a set schedule she has to stick to, which she likely won't get because at 16 and 17, courts likely won't make them stay with her against their will. Now for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, things have taken quite a turn since I last wrote. After the whole 23andMe suggestion got shot down by my in-laws, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. My husband and I had a long talk about it, and he admitted that he had his own doubts about the kids' parentage, especially given the whispers he'd heard over the years. We decided to go ahead with the paternity tests, but we agreed to keep it between us until we had the results. The tests came back, and it turns out that my husband's suspicions were right. The kids are not biologically his. This revelation hit us both hard. My husband was devastated, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness. We decided to confront his ex-wife about it. When we did, she admitted that she had known all along but didn't want to disrupt the kids' lives. She begged us not to tell them, saying it would only hurt them and that they see my husband as their real father anyway. This put us in a really tough spot. On one hand, we didn't want to hurt the kids, but on the other hand, we felt they had a right to know the truth. We decided to take some time to think about it before making any decisions. In the meantime, my husband's ex-wife started showing up more frequently, trying to spend more time with the kids. This only made things more complicated. One day, while my husband was at work, she showed up unannounced again. This time, she was adamant about taking the kids for the weekend. I told her that we already had plans, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She started yelling and causing a scene, which upset the kids. They didn't understand why she was so angry, and I didn't want to explain the real reason in front of them. After she left, the kids were visibly shaken. They started asking questions about why their mom was acting that way and why she didn't spend more time with them. I tried to reassure them, but it was clear that they were confused and hurt. This made me realize that we couldn't keep the truth from them forever. They deserved to know, even if it was going to be painful. My husband and I sat down with the kids and explained everything. We told them that we loved them no matter what, and that nothing would change that. They were understandably upset and had a lot of questions. We did our best to answer them and reassure them that we were still a family. It was a difficult conversation, but I think it was the right thing to do. In the days that followed, the kids were distant and withdrawn. They were struggling to process everything, and it was clear that they were hurting. My husband and I tried to be there for them as much as possible, but it was hard to see them in so much pain. We decided to seek the help of a family therapist to help us navigate this difficult time. The therapist helped us understand that the kids needed time to process their emotions, and that it was important for us to be patient and supportive. She also suggested that we set some boundaries with my husband's ex-wife to prevent her from causing more disruptions. We agreed and decided to have a meeting with her to discuss these boundaries. When we met with her, she was defensive and angry. She accused us of trying to keep the kids away from her and said that we were being unfair. We explained that we were only trying to protect the kids and that we needed her to respect our boundaries. After a heated discussion, she reluctantly agreed to give us advance notice before visiting and to respect our plans. As we navigated this new reality, I couldn't help but think about my own family history and how it had shaped my views on parentage and family. My father had left when I was young, and my mother had raised me on her own. I had always felt a sense of abandonment and had vowed to never let my own children feel that way. This situation with my husband's kids brought up a lot of those old feelings and made me even more determined to be there for them. One day, while we were having dinner, my stepson asked me why I had suggested the 23andMe test in the first place. I explained that I had been curious about our ancestry and thought it would be a fun family activity. He nodded and said that he understood, but I could see that he was still struggling with the truth. It was a reminder that this was going to be a long and difficult journey for all of us. As we continued to work through our emotions and rebuild our family, I realized that this experience had brought us closer together in some ways. My husband and I were more united than ever, and we were determined to support the kids through this difficult time. We knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but we were committed to facing them together. Thank you for taking the time to read this update. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.